What's up, everyone? Been a minute. Back on the truck again. Got a treat for you today. I've been waiting for this for like 2-3 weeks. So these take a little bit to be built, but they're top notch. So I figured I'd show it off. So what we have here, if you were going Holley for your engine management, I strongly recommend that you just buy the ECU. Don't buy the kit with their harness. Because compared to this thing, the Holley harness sucks. And I'm sorry the fan's going, but it's 14 million fucking degrees in Texas. And we haven't had rain in over a month. So it's 9 a.m. it's already over 90. So the fan's going. You'll just have to listen to me talk over it. Anyways, back on this. The Holley harness is a lot less to be desired. I understand its purpose, especially with the Terminator X. Like, it's made for the budget guy in mind. It has its place. If it's what you can afford, it's what you can afford, and you can make it work. Plenty of people have. But if you can save a little bit of money and order the ECU by itself. And if you can scrounge up the cash to order from these guys, HCR Innovations, their harness is incredible. I mean, it's just, and by the way, product. And this guy actually has a bunch of, his name's Devin, has a bunch of really good wiring videos on YouTube that are like free of use. I mean, if you're wondering how to do something correctly, this is the guy to go off of. I'll link his channel in my description. But anyways, I figured I'd just go over it. He has videos of this on his channel as well, and it kind of describes the differences, but I'll kind of hit the high points as far as the differences between the Holley harness. I've had both. He shows both on his channel. I actually sold my old harness, and I went to a Dominator instead of a Terminator, but this harness works for both. The way Holley has their ECU set up, if it's Dominator or Terminator, it works for both. The way he has his set up, it works for both. So these are about $1,200. They are fully tested from end to end when they're built. So one of the most common Holley problems is they're either labeled incorrectly or they're pinned wrong. So you got to plug this thing in and your vehicle won't start, or it runs real bad because something's pinned weird. He tests every single one of these that goes out the door. So when it shows up at your house, you know it's right. That means you also want to try really hard not to splice into this thing. He tells you in the paperwork, if you splice into it, your warranty's gone. So try not to splice into this. It's made so you don't have to do that. It's typically like a 4-wire hookup. There's a couple extra things if you're running points ignition or something weird like that. But for the most part, it's power and ground and switched power. So not a whole lot to hook up there. And a fuel pump. The green wires to trigger a fuel pump relay. So you can't run your fuel pump off this. That should be obvious with how small the wire is. You try and run a fuel pump off that, you're going to burn it up. So this goes to your trigger on your relay. Okay. Second of all, yes, it's a $1,200 harness, but unlike the Holley, this thing comes with everything to get you up and running. So the Holley does not come with an injector harness. It does not come with a coil harness. And it does not come with an ignition harness. And this right here is probably one of the coolest things, because what you do is you tell them what you have. So, for example, my engine, and these are all labeled super nice. My engine is a 24X crank sensor and a 1X cam sensor, okay? Say, for whatever reason, you decide to change your setup and you go to a big block or 58X, which would be probably more common if you're an LS guy. If you go to a 58X, all you got to do is call them up and say, hey, I'm switching to a 58X, can you send me an ignition sub-harness for it? And they send you the correct length one with the correct plugs and pinned correctly, and you're all set. You plug this piece in and you're back up and running. So it's pretty freaking awesome. Everything is terminated super nicely. It's double wall adhesive heat shrunk. And then my favorite part is, so he does heat shrink labels, and then he puts a clear piece of heat shrink over the top of it, so you can't rub that off. So these will be, as long as you don't cut that off, everything on here will be labeled forever, for its lifetime. Something else different, the Holley harness uses stock sensors for like your IAT, oil pressure, stuff like that. No more crimping weird crap on to make them work. He uses the GT style connectors, so anything like a Rife or a low dollar pressure transducer. So my fuel pressure sensor, my dome pressure sensor, the maps back there behind the manifold, and the oil pressure back there behind the manifold, all plugged straight in. So there's definitely, you're getting, is the harness more expensive than the Holley? Yes. Is it way better set up? Also yes. And you're getting some extra stuff that the Holley doesn't come with, especially with that coil upgrade thing that I kind of mentioned. Go watch his video, he explains it. The coil harness has grounds on it. That's another kind of, if you're doing like if you're pushing the stock coils real hard, this stuff is needed. And probably the biggest thing, the plus on this, so the Holley has a bunch of weird breakouts that don't really make sense, where the harness actually breaks out into all of the sensors. This thing only has like 2 or 3, and the main one is way back here. So basically you have a lot better options for routing everything and not having to stretch or cut the harness up to make it reach where you need it to reach. Anyways, and it has all the typical stuff. You know, here's your power tap. Or I'm sorry, that's wideband. My bad. It's nice that these are all labeled at least. Alright guys, little update. Obviously got the intake blown back off of this thing. Huge pain in the ass. I'm going to fix some of that so that way this doesn't suck to take apart so much. Everyone online's telling me drill the hole right here. I see plastic here, so I don't see how that's going to work out, but I'm going to go for it. I'm going to nip this off after I tape this side off so I don't get any metal down the intake ports. Nip this off, and then I'm punching a hole smack dab in the center there, 3" for a seal zit grommet. Supposedly it'll fit. Maybe I'll go a little to the right, but we're gonna find out. Yeah, hopefully there's nothing behind that. I think there is, but worst case I just don't punch a hole in the seal zit grommet and I'll re-rivet it on and it'll be sealed. So anyways, what I am gonna change on this Y setup here with these 2 little short hoses, I'm going to make these way longer and send it to the right, to the driver's side, and have it way out, so that way this is not as annoying as it is right now. It's just there's no good way to get to this Y, which is the hookup for the fuel, so this is just stuff that you run into as you're, I mean obviously there's not a whole lot of room back here, so getting these out from behind it will help make some more room. But we're learning, getting there slowly, a little bit at a time. So I'm gonna drill this hole real quick. Alright, got everything installed, pass-throughs. I RTV'd them on along with riveting them. Finally mounted my dipstick instead of running it off the fuel rail. I'm trying to keep everything off the intake manifold, so if I need to take it off, it's very easy. I've run everything that doesn't need to be attached to it underneath the steam port kit. That's intake air temp. Then this is throttle position and fuel pressure and IAC. Everything back there is for coils and injectors and wideband going off that way, and then cam and crank are also going off that way. And then yeah, see, like this, I'll have another separate harness that I'll have to run over there at some point. I can fish it through. And then I'm going to tie up nicely my injector harness. You see it's kind of just loose right now, not a zip ties, but I think I'm going to pop a little hole in that webbing right there, and then I'll have a nice point to mount the harness so it's attached to the intake, so that way when I need to take this thing off again, if I ever do, I can pull it off as one whole unit instead of a bunch of separate pieces, which is really annoying. So alright guys, I don't remember where I left off, but anyways, got the seals at grommets drilled and installed, and obviously I pulled the harness through, so looking pretty nice. Pretty awesome. It's like probably the bulk of the control wiring. There'll be more coming from here once I integrate the stock ECU into this thing, so that everything in the cab works, like the gauges and lights and all that. But today, this is a week later by the way, we're going to put the intake manifold back on. I'm going to remake these lines back here that you saw me make in another video, because there's not enough room. I need to move this Y way off that way. So I've got new -8, and we're going to extend those lines, redo them all, and slam this bitch back together. So enjoy. Alright, in process of disassembling the fuel lines. As you can see, that's about the amount of line I was working with to make this all work. So we're going to go way longer and pull this thing down out of the way. Went ahead and tapped the water pump. I was told not to do it this way, but I also saw a bunch of people saying it was fine, so we're going to try it. Worst case, I'll just stick a pipe plug in that and then make this new line again and run it all the way to the radiator if I have to. But I'm going to try it like this. I think it might work. I don't see why it wouldn't. So we'll find out, I guess. Alright, new AN lines to feed the back of the rails are done. So we went from this to these. Slight change. So I'm going to get my harness for my injectors all zip tied up and prettied. Bolt that onto the intake and drop the whole thing on in one piece. The goal is to be able to take this thing on and off with the fuel lines and everything in one piece, so it's real easy to access. So hopefully we get that. Here goes nothing. Alright, big update. All the lines are in. The fuel lines work perfect. I'm going to mount them to the firewall there, and then they run down, and they're pretty far away from the exhaust. Probably run it on the other side of the frame rail there, just to stay out of the way. And everything fits very nicely. The wiring is stupid clean looking. Ran everything underneath the intake manifold. Kind of looks like a jumbled mess a little bit, but in person it looks really nice once I get everything zip tied and cleaned up. And so very happy with that, and it should be very serviceable. Like if I have to take this back apart, I can just pull the whole manifold in one shot. There's nothing crazy like before. The bolts were perfect, 60 mil length. They're M6 by 1 and they're 60 millimeters long, so it's the perfect length for that. Obviously I got to put the coil packs back on. I'm going to pull one valve cover and make sure, just to double check the bolts aren't interfering with the push rods, because these are not blind holes. They actually go all the way down into the push rod area, so if your bolts are too long they'll snag on the push rod. Other than that, looking pretty sweet. Very excited. I'm going to get that fuel line mounted, and I forgot one bolt. I was short one, so I got to go buy another one and torque everything. Anyways, it is very hot out. I think I'm done for the day, and that's the update on the Silverado project. Thanks for watching. Bye.